G'day Reefers, I'm Cam the Fish Guy. Thanks for watching Gallery Aquatica TV. As you may know, I'm a huge advocate for using phytoplankton in your reef tank. It's a great food for corals as well as other creatures such as clams, and it's the building blocks of the marine ecosystem. Today we're going to talk about phytoplankton cultures, and we're going to show you exactly what it takes to culture your own phytoplankton. Phytoplankton are single-celled algae which effectively float around the ocean, replicating and growing. And we use phytoplankton in the marine aquariums to feed our corals, and so culturing them is something that's becoming really popular. You can see here we have a typical phytoplankton culture. We've got different colors which indicate different ages and different strains. You can see there's a light behind the phytoplankton cultures because they're photosynthetic and they do require the light to grow. We've got air pumps feeding into each of them, which is also important to provide carbon dioxide as well as to agitate the plankton. But we're going to show you exactly what it takes to culture your own phytoplankton, and we're going to meet Josh, who cultures all the phytoplankton that we sell at Gallery Aquatica. So let's go check out how you make your own phytoplankton. So I'd like to introduce Josh.
G'day Reefers.
And Josh has got one of the best nano reef tanks you'll ever see. It's called Reef. You may have seen the video. It's a particularly nice tank, and I think one of the reasons why it is so nice is because of the phytoplankton that you're feeding. Josh also supplies the phytoplankton to Gallery Aquatica. So what are we going to be doing here with our phytoplankton today?
This bottle is ready to split.
So this is one from the culture that we were just looking at outside.
Right. And it's matured, it's around 7 to 10 days and the density is just right.
Yep.
And what we'd like to be able to do is take some for use into the tank, and we'd like to perpetuate the culture for next week, harvesting. So
effectively harvesting some of the culture and then using the remainder of the culture to continue the culture in another vessel.
That's right.
Let's talk about what we're going to use to keep this culture going. So first of all, this is the medium, you got it?
Yep.
And what's in the medium?
It's artificial salt water, made up out of Red Sea blue bucket and tap water.
So we were having this conversation previously. The water that you use for your culture is quite important, and using artificial salt water means that you're able to ensure that it's sterile and that there's no...
To get consistency.
Yep.
Absolutely. And for many people, it's easier than having to disinfect natural seawater.
Okay, so artificial salt with tap water, quite an interesting idea, and you use fraction or something to... Or prime. Yep, something to dechlorinate your artificial salt water with tap water. Yeah, artificial salt with tap water. Yes. Okay. And then we've got fertilizers.
Yes, we do. So we use the Gillard's F2 recipe, which is by Reef Revolution, which I believe is an Australian organisation.
Reef Revolution.
Works just fine. Around 1 mil of part A and 1 mil of part B seems to be working for us quite well per litre of medium we're making. Okay,
so this is a two-part. We've actually got two of the B here. Usually it's a A and a B, and unfortunately we've just got the B at the moment. But so what we're doing with our medium, we've got our medium mixed up with, so it'd be 5 mil of the A, 5 mil of the B, and also some Coral Essentials.
Nitrate, absolutely. So this particular phytoplankton is Nanochloropsis, and it needs to take all of its nitrogen from the water. So sometimes we've found much better consistency and success at the densities that we're bringing it up to by adding a little extra nitrate to the medium.
And once you've got that all mixed, you leave it for a period of time?
Yeah, 24 to 48 hours. We try and get it to stand. If we can go longer than 24, that's better, but usually, we want to get things done. So it's about how do we get everything timing. All right,
so you've got your water mixed up with your fertilizers and your nitrate, and now what are we going to do with it?
So what we're going to do is we're going to take the phyto out of the old vessel.
Yep.
We're going to split it into the new vessel and be able to decant it into our bottles.
All right, sounds good. So we've got our culture in here,
Yep.
and so how much are you going to tip into here?
About half.
Yep. And this will be
About half.
closing the valve. And so you're keeping half to dilute it back, and then the rest is going to be harvested into our bottles.
That's right.
Okay.
Exactly.
And the bottles are sterilised.
Sterilised and clean, all waiting to go.
And then you put a cover on that.
So I'm going to use cling wrap to be able to create the seal across the top, mostly for evaporation purposes. The lids that come with jars usually get like something horrible growing on them that's not phytoplankton.
Yep.
So having it throw away and disposable is a good idea. And then the next step is
Yep.
2 holes, so one to let the air out, and that's going to create like a type of vacuum.
Yep.
And that's going to help keep contaminants out while it's growing for the next week to 10 days.
Okay.
And this one's ready to go get some air and some light.
Yep.
And it's good to go. This one's ready for a reef tank.
All right. So we'll put this back on the culture.
Yep.
And we'll feed this one to the tank.
That's right.
All right. Sounds good. So we're in front of a lot of reef, and we're going to feed some phytoplankton, and Josh has got an interesting way of feeding it, and I think this is really cool. So just run us through what you're doing.
I'm going to put about 1/4 teaspoon of reefroids into my phytoplankton. So one of the issues that we're having with this tank is getting the nutrients up. So the phyto brings a huge amount of nitrogen really, really quickly, and we're hoping to balance some of that nitrogen out with the phosphate and nutrition that's in the reefroids. So what we're going to do is combine the two.
And this is the bottle, the size of the bottle that we sell at Gallery
Yep.
Aquatica. So this is something you could very easily do. And so you mix in the reefroids.
We're going to turn our return pumps off.
Yep.
I'm going to give that about half an hour to feed the system.
And the whole thing goes in.
The whole thing goes in and all the polyps will start to come out and all the animals get pretty happy pretty quick.
That's really cool, because effectively what you're doing is you're feeding a phytoplankton and a zooplankton all in one, and the bottle itself makes it for a very easy to feed way.
Yep.
Yeah, it sounds like a great idea, and be interesting to see how the corals respond to it. I'm sure they're going to love it.
Well, we have had a lot of compliments about really good polyp extension and colours,
Oh, yeah?
but mostly the nitrogen.
I think I said the polyp extension was pretty good, didn't I?
It's the nitrogen and getting it right into the corals, because the phytoplankton, it's just like a delivery system, and the corals just suck up what they need.
Yep.
And everything else we filter out with our skimmer.
Yeah, awesome. So good. So whilst the corals are feasting on this combination of phytoplankton and reefroids, let's just go through some of the little steps, the finer details of growing phytoplankton that I think some people might struggle with. So first of all, sterility, I would assume, is something very important.
Absolutely, in the medium.
Yep.
We're
The
trying
medium being the water
water,
that you're using
yes.
to mix. Yep.
So we want to create an environment that's conducive to growing.
Phyto, as opposed to bacteria.
Yes.
Yep.
And there are some instances where diatoms or spirulina is really popular. Like going back to freshwater days, you'd add spirulina for the better colour enhancement of fish. That's actually a blue-green algae, which is in the phylum of cyanobacteria. Not the ugly red stuff, but
Yep.
actually just by a classification. So the different growers want to actually be able to produce a result that grows their target species.
Yep.
So today we were having a look at nano and recognised that adding the extra nitrogen is particularly good for that strain.
Yep.
The actual water itself, though, there's a couple of different ways to do it. We've found a lot more success not using RODI water because it is too clean.
And this is what I found quite interesting. I mean, going back to this medium, the water that you're using, there are different ways of doing it. And we're talking about using the tap water with an artificial salt, but you're actually saying that's better than using RODI, because that's straight away my thought is, you use RODI water and artificial salt, and that way it'd be perfectly sterile, but you don't find as much success doing it that way.
And no, I don't. And I went and did a lot of hunting around, and it was actually a shout out to Mark Levinson of Melev's Reef, who was having a similar trouble back in like 2001 or 2002. So that's how old the thread was, where somebody else in the community said, hey, have a look at your tap water rather than RODI. And I thought, oh, this makes so much sense. Let's give that a go. And sure enough, the number of crashes almost disappeared.
And that's what it's really coming down to. I mean, the number of crashes that you're having with cultures, I mean, not just phytoplankton, but other, cultures, the number of crashes that you have can be the thing, and minimising crashes is, what else can you do to minimise the number of crashes that you get with your phytoplankton? Yeah,
so having that water really helped, understanding that. There is a better one that's slightly better, which is natural seawater, but you have to disinfect it. And that can be a lot of work.
That was very interesting, I thought. If you're using natural seawater for your culture, you've got to disinfect it using, what was it, chlorine?
Sodium hypochlorite, which is a type of chlorine.
And then you've got to remove the chlorine from that using prime or fraction or a neutraliser or something.
That's right. So it's easy to use the tap water and you're using the fraction or the prime anyway.
And what about time frames? We're talking about the time that you run the light on the phytoplankton.
So we run the light at, we're using 6500K spectrum, so we're trying to get broad daylight.
Yep, so the spectrum of the light on your phytoplankton culture is important.
Yeah, absolutely it is. And then the time frame is around 16 hours.
Yep, so 16 hours of light and then, 8 hours of dark. And what other important considerations are there with your...
It has been an interesting journey. The idea of phyto is really important to me because I like the idea of adding nutrients organically rather than through chemicals.
Yep.
And there's quite a number of papers, especially around SPS and a number of different types, that talk about how effective that nutrient and the nitrogen uptake is by coral. So I thought that's fascinating, want to give that a go. So I was more comfortable dosing phyto, for example, for that reason than it was trying to dose sodium nitrate, for example, to get the nitrates up, because we're always struggling with the low.
How often do you actually feed phyto to this tank?
As we just saw, that would happen probably 3 times a week into this reef.
Yep.
Sometimes I think maybe a little bit more, but we've been on quite the journey to be able to try and strike balance. But the tank just keeps removing more than I can put in there, and that's why we're looking at maybe other fish or increasing feeding.
Yeah, I think I've been feeding my display tank at the shop probably 4 or 5 times a week with it, and I've definitely seen a benefit. I think it's one of the things that's improved my reef tank more than anything. I've
got to say, small amounts often with Phyto, and then it's not going to be like a miracle cure. Let's just glug in a bottle and away we go. Just do it over a period of time, steadily for your system.
And usually you feed, you do the same as me with the time that you feed. I mean, we've just fed it, its lights are still on, but you normally feed it just at lights out?
Yes, just as it's going on dark.
I've always done that as well, and I kind of assume that that's something that's, triggers the acros to sort of put the polyps out, and that's sort of the time that they would typically like to feed. I think it's probably a case of getting into a rhythm and doing it on a regular time is also of benefit. Certainly rhythm with your reef tank is important, but
and every tank's a little different as to how much people are using. It's a really good substitute. It's more natural, for example, than some of the chemical versions of amino acids. But that's essentially what you're feeding. Nanocolopsis is very, very popular because it's very, very high in fatty acids and aminos and or EPA, all very good things for corals. Which is usually why it's cultured so readily across the hobby. But it's just, if you're already putting in aminos and that's what's working for you, great. Putting in phyto, you might have a different result from somebody whose system is a lot more hungry or nutrient deprived. So it's just about understanding what it is that you're doing with your reef, and you just run your reef your way.
Well, it's certainly a fascinating topic, and it's been great learning about phytoplankton, how to culture it, and the benefits of it. And as you can see with a lot of Reef, it's certainly doing wonders for this tank. So, thank you, Josh.
Thanks, Cam.
And thank you for watching this episode of Gallery Aquatica TV. I'm Cam the Fish Guy.
Happy reefing.
Happy reefing. That's it for this week's episode of Gallery Aquatica TV. Don't forget to like and comment on all our videos and subscribe to our channel. Stay tuned to Gallery Aquatica TV for more exciting episodes to come. I'm Cam the Fish Guy. Happy reefing!